The morning sun cast long shadows across the refugee camp as Maya Chen finished repairing another torn shelter. Her hands were stained with the synthetic fabric sealant, and her back ached from hunching over the portable fusion welder. Around her, thousands of displaced humans lived in temporary structures that barely qualified as homes. Nobody knew her real name here. To the camp administrators, she was just another refugee from the Kepler 442 evacuation. To the other survivors, she was simply the tent girl, the quiet young woman who fixed their shelters when the alien storms tore them apart, who somehow always had spare materials when supply drops ran late, who never asked for anything in return. Maya preferred it that way. 3 years ago, she had been Lieutenant Maya Chen of the Terran Defense Force Engineering Corps, specializing in rapid deployment fortifications and emergency infrastructure. She had served on the front lines during humanity's first contact war with the Zephyrian Empire, building the defensive positions that had held their advance long enough for the evacuation fleets to escape. But that was before the court-martial, before the classified records were sealed, before she disappeared into the endless stream of refugees fleeing the outer colonies. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was still doing the same work, just without the uniform or the recognition. Every patched tent, every improvised water filtration system, every jury-rigged power coupling was a small victory against the chaos that had consumed human space. As she worked, Maya listened to the camp's communication feeds through her modified tablet. The news was never good. The Zephyrian fleet had pushed deeper into human territory, their biomechanical warships adapting to every defensive strategy the Terran Navy deployed. Colony after colony fell, their populations either killed or scattered to camps like this one. The worst part was the helplessness. Maya had spent her military career solving problems, building solutions, making the impossible work with nothing but scrap metal and determination. But here, surrounded by millions of refugees spread across dozens of worlds, individual action seemed meaningless. "Miss Chen?" A small voice interrupted her thoughts. Maya looked up to see Tommy, an 8-year-old boy whose parents had died in the Rigel evacuation. He clutched a broken toy, a miniature starship that had been his most prized possession. "The wings fell off again," he said, his eyes downcast. Maya smiled and set down her tools. "Let's take a look at that." She examined the toy carefully. The plastic joints had worn out from constant handling, and the cheap adhesive had failed in the camp's humid atmosphere. But Maya saw something else, an opportunity to teach. "You know, Tommy, this little ship has the same problem that real starships have. Want to learn how engineers fix things like this?" For the next hour, Maya walked Tommy through the repair process, showing him how to reinforce weak points, how different materials responded to stress, how to think 3 steps ahead of the next failure. She used salvaged components from her repair kit, turning the simple toy into a more robust version of itself. Other children gathered around, drawn by Tommy's excitement. Soon Maya found herself teaching an impromptu engineering class, using broken toys and camp equipment to demonstrate principles of structural integrity, power distribution, and system redundancy. "Why do you know so much about this stuff?" asked Sarah, a teenager whose sharp questions reminded Maya of her younger self. Maya hesitated. "I used to build things. Important things, like what?" Before Maya could answer, the camp's emergency alert system activated. The distinctive wailing tone sent everyone scrambling for their assigned shelter positions, a sound that meant incoming hostiles. Maya's training kicked in automatically. While other refugees panicked or stood frozen, she was already moving, her eyes scanning the camp's layout for defensive weaknesses. The shelters were too close together, creating bottlenecks. The evacuation routes funneled people into killing fields. The whole camp was a tactical nightmare. Overhead, the first Zephyrian scouts appeared, sleek, organic-looking craft that moved with predatory grace. Their biosensors swept the camp, cataloging targets for the main assault force that would surely follow. Maya's hands clenched into fists. She had sworn never to be helpless again, never to watch innocent people die while she stood by and did nothing. But what could one disgraced engineer do against an alien invasion force? Then she looked at the children gathered around her, still clutching their repaired toys, trusting her to keep them safe. Tommy held his starship like a talisman, and Maya realized that sometimes the smallest actions rippled outward in ways no one could predict. The Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake. They assumed this was just another refugee camp full of helpless civilians. They had no idea that among the thousands of displaced persons stood someone who had studied their tactics, learned their weaknesses, and spent 3 years preparing for exactly this moment. Maya Chen, the tent girl, was about to remind the galaxy why humanity had survived this long. The Zephyrian scout ships circled the camp like vultures, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. Maya watched from the shadow of a supply depot, her mind automatically calculating approach vectors, weapon ranges, and response times. 3 years of fixing tents hadn't dulled her tactical instincts. Camp Administrator Reeves was shouting orders through his communicator, trying to coordinate an evacuation that everyone knew was hopeless. The nearest transport ships were hours away, and the camp's defenses consisted of nothing more than a handful of security guards with outdated pulse rifles. Maya made her decision. She sprinted toward the camp's maintenance sector, dodging panicked refugees as alarms continued to wail. The storage warehouses contained everything she had quietly accumulated over the past 3 years, materials officially requisitioned for tent repairs but actually stockpiled for exactly this scenario. Her first stop was Warehouse 7, where she had hidden components for what the refugees would need most: a shield generator. Not the massive planetary defense systems that protected core worlds, but something smaller, more elegant, a distributed network that could turn every repaired tent into a node in a defensive grid. Maya's hands flew over the control panels as she activated systems that hadn't been used since her military days. The fusion cells she had borrowed from supply drops hummed to life, powering equipment that officially didn't exist. Within minutes, she had transformed the warehouse into a command center that would have impressed her old engineering corps. But she needed help, and time was running out. Sarah. Maya called to the teenager who had questioned her earlier. The girl appeared in the warehouse doorway, her eyes wide with fear, but her stance steady. "What's happening? Everyone's saying we're all going to die." "Not if I can help it," Maya said, tossing Sarah a toolkit. "Remember when I showed you how power systems work? I need you to run these cables to every tent in Section C. Connect them exactly like I showed you with Tommy's toy." Sarah caught the toolkit and nodded grimly. "What are you building?" "Something the Zephyrians have never seen before," Maya replied, already moving to the next phase of her plan. A refugee camp that fights back. As Sarah ran toward Section C, Maya activated her modified communicator and began broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Her message was simple. Any refugees with technical skills needed to report to the maintenance sector immediately. She didn't have time to explain, but she was betting that 3 years of fixing their shelters had earned her enough trust for people to follow her lead. To her amazement, they came. Engineers who had been working as janitors, starship mechanics who had been assigned to food service, former military personnel who had been hiding their backgrounds just like she had. In less than 20 minutes, Maya had assembled a team of 30 specialists who had been invisible in the crowd of refugees. "Listen carefully," she told them, her voice carrying the authority she had tried to bury for 3 years. "The Zephyrians think this is a soft target. They're wrong. Every tent in this camp has been modified with conductive fibers that I've been installing during routine repairs. Every power cell, every water recycler, every communication relay can be networked together. We're not just going to defend this camp. We're going to turn it into the largest distributed defense system ever deployed." The team stared at her with growing amazement and hope. These weren't random refugees anymore. They were engineers and soldiers who suddenly remembered what they were capable of when properly led. "Johnson," Maya pointed to a grizzled former Navy tech, "I need you to modify the camp's communication array. Boost the signal strength and patch it into the sensor network I'm building. Williams, take 6 people and start installing the targeting computers I've hidden in Warehouse 3. Each section of the camp needs to function as an independent fire control system. Rodriguez, you're our weapons specialist. The manufacturing facility in Warehouse 5 has been producing more than just tent stakes. Time to break out the real inventory." As her team scattered to their assignments, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. The electric thrill of command, of building something greater than the sum of its parts, of turning desperate circumstances into tactical advantage. The first wave of Zephyrian attack ships was already descending toward the camp, their weapons charging for what they expected to be a simple massacre. They had no idea they were flying into a trap 3 years in the making. Maya's communicator crackled with updates from her team leaders. Tent networks coming online, weapon systems activating, sensor grids establishing connections. The camp was transforming from a collection of helpless refugees into something unprecedented in human military history. But Maya saved the most important job for herself. While her team handled the technical implementation, she climbed to the camp's highest observation tower, where she had installed her masterpiece, a quantum communications array disguised as a weather monitoring station. With this equipment, she could reach anyone, anywhere in human space, including the one person who might believe her message and have the authority to act on it. Maya's fingers hesitated over the controls. Once she sent this signal, there would be no more hiding, no more anonymity. The tent girl would disappear forever, and the consequences of her past would finally catch up with her. Above, the Zephyrian ships opened fire on what they thought was a defenseless target. Below, the first elements of Maya's defense grid activated, turning their expected easy victory into the beginning of something that would change the course of the war. Maya opened the quantum channel and began transmitting on General Harrison's personal frequency, hoping that her former commanding officer would answer a call from a disgraced subordinate who officially didn't exist. The first Zephyrian plasma bolt struck the camp's outer perimeter, expecting to incinerate flimsy refugee shelters. Instead, they hit Maya's distributed shield network and scattered harmlessly across an energy field that spanned the entire settlement. The alien pilots had never encountered anything like it. A defensive system that grew, stronger as more nodes connected to the grid. Maya's communicator crackled with surprised voices from her engineering teams as they watched their improvised creation work exactly as designed, but she barely heard them, focused entirely on the quantum channel display as she waited for General Harrison to respond. Unknown station. This is a restricted military frequency, came the gruff voice she remembered from countless briefings. Identify yourself immediately or face. General, this is Lieutenant Maya Chen. Authorization code Alpha 77 Delta 9er. Sir, I need you to listen very carefully because I'm about to save your war. The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats. When Harrison spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. Lieutenant Chen is dead according to official records. Who is this really? Sir, you court-martialed me for insubordination after I refused to abandon the Kepler 442 evacuation to reinforce the Rigel defense grid. You said I was too stubborn for my own good and that someday my refusal to follow orders would get people killed. 3 years later, that same stubbornness is about to save 10,000 civilians and give you the tactical advantage you need to end this war. Another pause. Maya could picture Harrison in his command center, probably surrounded by tactical displays showing Terran forces in retreat across a dozen systems. The old general had aged visibly during the war, carrying the weight of decisions that determined the fate of entire worlds. Maya, he said finally, using her first name for the first time she could remember. Where are you? Refugee camp designation 77 Alpha on Sanctuary 3. The Zephyrians just made their biggest mistake of the war by attacking us. General, I've turned this entire camp into a weapons platform, and I'm about to demonstrate why human engineering is superior to their biotechnology. Through the observation tower's reinforced windows, Maya watched the alien attack ships regroup for a second assault. Their formation was perfect, their movements coordinated through bio-neural links that made traditional jamming useless. But Maya had spent 3 years studying Zephyrian tactics through intercepted communications, and she had identified a critical weakness. Their bioships were individuals first, squadron members second. They relied on instinct and adaptation rather than rigid coordination. That made them incredibly effective against conventional forces, but vulnerable to tactics they had never encountered. Rodriguez, are the hunter-killer drones ready? Maya spoke into her local communicator while keeping the quantum channel open to Harrison. Affirmative. Warehouse 5 is launching now. From concealed positions throughout the camp, small flying drones emerged and began moving in seemingly random patterns. The Zephyrians ignored them initially. The drones appeared to be civilian evacuation units fleeing the battle zone. By the time the aliens realized their mistake, it was too late. Each drone carried a small but sophisticated warhead designed to exploit the Zephyrians' greatest strength. Their bioships healed damage automatically, their living hulls adapting to whatever had hurt them. But Maya's weapons didn't destroy. They infected. The first drone detonated against a Zephyrian fighter, releasing a cloud of nanobots programmed with corrupted bio-commands. Instead of healing the ship's damaged sections, the nanobots caused uncontrolled growth, turning armor plating into tumor-like masses that disrupted flight systems. "General, are you seeing this?" Maya asked as she transmitted tactical data through the quantum link. "My God, Maya, how did you—" 3 years of studying their biology through medical reports from captured ships. The Zephyrians' adaptive healing is based on genetic templates stored in their biocomputers. Change the templates, and you can make their own bodies work against them. More drones reached their targets, and the Zephyrian formation began to disintegrate as infected ships lost control. But Maya wasn't finished. This was her chance to prove that human ingenuity could overcome any technological disadvantage. "Johnson, activate the resonance cannons." Throughout the camp, disguised transmitter arrays began broadcasting specific frequencies that interfered with Zephyrian bioneural communications. The alien pilots suddenly found themselves isolated, cut off from the hive mind coordination that made their tactics so effective. Confused and panicked, they began making individual decisions instead of coordinated group maneuvers. Some tried to retreat, others pressed the attack, and several collided with their own squad mates as their formation dissolved into chaos. "Williams, bring the main guns online." Maya's final surprise emerged from what had appeared to be the camp's waste processing facility. The massive structure split open to reveal a pair of heavy plasma cannons, salvaged from destroyed Terran warships and rebuilt with improvements Maya had developed during her 3 years of exile. The weapons fired once, twice, and 2 Zephyrian heavy cruisers that had been preparing to bombard the camp simply ceased to exist. "General," Maya said into the quantum communicator, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system, "I've just demonstrated that we can turn any refugee camp into a fortress, any civilian population into a defensive network. The Zephyrians have been winning because they assume we'll fight them on their terms. It's time to change the rules." Through her earpiece, Maya could hear the bustle of activity in Harrison's command center as staff officers processed the tactical data she was transmitting. The implications were staggering. If they could replicate her techniques across the hundreds of refugee camps scattered throughout human space, they could transform the war from a retreat into a counteroffensive. "Maya, what do you need from me?" "Fleet support, sir. I've bloodied their nose, but there's a full Zephyrian battle group 20 minutes out. They're going to come back with everything they have, and this camp represents something they can't allow to exist. Proof that humans can adapt faster than they can." "Understood. I'm dispatching the 3rd Fleet to your position." "Sir, there's one more thing. When this is over, I want to go home." The quantum channel fell silent for a moment. When Harrison spoke again, his voice carried a warmth Maya had never heard before. "Lieutenant, after what you've accomplished today, I think we can arrange that. Chen, I need to ask you something." "Yes, sir?" "How many other tent girls do we have scattered through the refugee camps? How many other officers are we wasting because we were too proud to admit we made mistakes?" Maya smiled as she watched the surviving Zephyrian ships flee toward their reinforcements. Soon this quiet camp would become the center of the most important battle of the war. But for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't facing it alone. The 18 minutes between the first attack and the arrival of the Zephyrian battle group passed like hours. Maya moved through the camp with purpose, transforming terrified refugees into components of the most sophisticated defense network ever improvised by human engineering. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to evacuate the children to the underground shelters," she called to the camp's chief administrator. "Make sure they take their toys, especially the ones I've repaired recently." The older woman stared at Maya with new understanding. "You've been planning this for 3 years, haven't you?" "Planning for survival," Maya corrected. "The children's toys contain microtransmitters. If something happens to me, they'll maintain communication with our defensive systems. Even 8-year-olds can be part of the network if they have to be." As families hurried toward the reinforced bunkers Maya had secretly constructed beneath the camp, her engineering teams made final preparations. The distributed defense grid now covered 20 square kilometers. With backup systems hidden in locations the Zephyrians would never think to target. Tommy found Maya as she checked the primary control systems one last time. The boy clutched his repaired starship, but his eyes were serious beyond his years. "Are the bad aliens going to hurt us?" he asked. Maya knelt to his level. Tommy, do you remember what I taught you about making things stronger? He nodded. You said broken things could be better than new things if you fix them right. That's exactly right. This whole camp was broken, full of people who lost their homes, their families, their hope. But we fixed it together, and now it's stronger than anyone imagined possible. Even stronger than real spaceships, especially stronger than real spaceships because we built it with something the aliens don't understand. What's that? Maya smiled. We built it with heart. As Tommy ran toward the shelters, Maya's quantum communicator chimed with an incoming priority signal. General Harrison's voice carried urgency and amazement in equal measure. Maya, we're tracking the Zephyrian response force. 12 heavy cruisers, 40 fighters, and something we've never seen before. A command ship the size of a small moon. They're not just coming to destroy your camp. They're treating it as an existential threat. Maya checked her tactical displays. The alien formation was indeed massive, representing more firepower than most planetary defense systems could handle. But that was exactly what she had hoped for. General, they're making the same mistake everyone always makes about refugees. They see victims instead of survivors, people who have lost everything but refuse to give up. The Zephyrians think they're bringing enough force to crush us, but they're actually bringing exactly what we need. What do you mean? Before Maya could answer, her proximity alarms activated. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived in orbit, their bioships blotting out the afternoon sun as they arranged themselves in perfect attack formation. The command ship Harrison had mentioned hung in the center like a giant tumor, its surface crawling with organic weapon systems. Maya, Sarah's voice crackled through the local communicator. All sections report ready. The network is stable and every refugee family is in position. Rodriguez here. Weapons are armed and tracking targets. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Johnson reporting. Communication links are solid and I've got a lock on their command frequencies. Maya took a deep breath and activated the camp's public address system. Her voice carried across the settlement, reaching every bunker and shelter where 10,000 people waited to learn their fate. Citizens of Camp 77 Alpha, this is Maya Chen. Some of you know me as the tent girl who fixed your homes. Today I'm asking you to help me fix something much bigger, the future of humanity in this galaxy. She paused, watching through her displays as the Zephyrian ships began their descent toward the camp. The aliens above us think we're helpless because we lost our original homes. They're wrong. We didn't lose our homes. We brought them with us. Every tent you sleep in, every friend you've made, every act of kindness you've shared with your neighbors. That's home. And we defend our homes. The first wave of alien fighters screamed through the atmosphere, their biocannons charging for what they expected to be the final blow against human resistance in this sector. They had no idea they were diving into a trap that would redefine the art of warfare. Activate all systems, Maya commanded. The refugee camp exploded into action. Shield generators hidden beneath every tent created an interlocking network of defensive barriers. Weapons emplacements disguised as water recyclers and waste processors emerged from concealment. Communication arrays that had appeared to be entertainment systems began broadcasting coordinated, targeting data. But Maya's greatest weapon was something the Zephyrians couldn't understand or counter: the complete integration of human creativity and determination into every system. Her defensive network didn't just respond to attacks. It learned from them, adapted to them, and turned them into fuel for stronger counterstrikes. The first alien plasma barrage struck the shield network and was absorbed, its energy redistributed to power systems throughout the camp. Zephyrian biomissiles found their targeting systems confused by fake signals generated by children's toys. Enemy fighters discovered that the helpless civilians they were attacking could coordinate their defensive fire with precision that made veteran military units look clumsy. General Harrison, Maya spoke into her quantum communicator while coordinating the battle through dozens of tactical displays. Are you recording this engagement? Every sensor we have is locked on your position. Maya, what you're doing is impossible. Your energy efficiency ratings are beyond anything our engineers predicted. That's because we're not just defending a military target, sir. We're defending our families, our friends, our future. The Zephyrians brought enough firepower to destroy a fortress, but they can't comprehend the difference between a fortress and a home. The battle raged for 30 minutes, with wave after wave of alien attackers breaking against Maya's improvised defenses. Each assault grew more desperate as the Zephyrian commanders realized they were facing something unprecedented: a human population that refused to be victimized. Then the massive command ship began to descend, its weapons charging for a bombardment that would crack the planet's crust if necessary to eliminate this unprecedented threat. Maya smiled grimly and activated her final surprise, the reason she had wanted the aliens to bring their largest, most powerful vessel within range of her hidden systems. General, you asked what I meant about the Zephyrians bringing exactly what we need. I'm about to show you how refugees become liberators. Deep beneath the camp, fusion reactors that had been disguised as geological survey equipment for 3 years suddenly synchronized their output. The energy surge was visible from orbit as every system Maya had built began operating at maximum capacity. The tent girl was about to steal a Zephyrian command ship. The Zephyrian command ship dominated the sky above the refugee camp, its biomechanical hull stretching nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern. Organic weapons pods along its flanks glowed with lethal energy, preparing to glass the entire region, rather than allow Maya's defensive innovations to spread to other human settlements. Maya, get your people out of there. General Harrison's voice crackled through the quantum communicator. That thing has enough firepower to sterilize half the continent. No evacuation, General, Maya replied calmly as she initiated the final phase of her 3-year plan. We're exactly where we need to be. The massive alien vessel's biocannons began charging, their organic cores pulsing with destructive energy that could melt rock and vaporize atmosphere. But as the weapons powered up, something unexpected happened. The ship's own bioelectrical systems began experiencing cascading failures. Maya had spent 3 years studying captured Zephyrian technology, learning how their living ships maintained themselves through complex biological processes. She had discovered that their vessels were essentially massive organisms held together by bioelectrical networks that could be disrupted if you knew exactly where to apply pressure. Rodriguez, are the insertion pods ready? She asked through her local communicator, standing by. I still can't believe you want us to board that thing while it's trying to kill us. The Zephyrians made their ships too perfect, Maya explained, as she watched her hidden systems affect the enemy vessel. Every biofunction is integrated, which means a small disruption in the right place can cascade through the entire organism. We're not boarding an enemy ship. We're performing surgery on a patient that doesn't know it needs help. Throughout the camp, Maya's engineering teams had been preparing for this moment. Disguised as waste disposal units, a dozen small spacecraft had been hidden beneath the settlement for 3 years. Each vessel contained a team of volunteers equipped with biohacking tools Maya had developed from studying Zephyrian physiology. Johnson, begin the neural interference protocol, Maya commanded. The camp's modified communication arrays began broadcasting specific frequencies that disrupted the Zephyrian command ship's internal coordination systems. The massive vessel shuddered as its bioneural networks experienced something like a seizure, leaving individual sections operating independently instead of as a coordinated whole. All teams, launch now. The insertion pods burst from their hidden positions and streaked toward the command ship, their modified hulls designed to mimic Zephyrian biosignatures. To the alien vessel's confused defensive systems, they appeared to be returning fighters rather than hostile boarders. Maya watched through her tactical displays as her teams penetrated the ship's hull and began their work. Each pod carried specialists who understood how to interface with Zephyrian biotechnology, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their most critical vulnerability. Team Alpha is in, came Rodriguez's voice. We've reached the primary neural nexus. Beginning conversion protocol. Maya had discovered that Zephyrian ships weren't just alive, they were intelligent, capable of learning and adapting to new situations. But their intelligence was constrained by genetic programming that forced them to serve their creators. If that programming could be altered, if the ship could be convinced that its true masters were human rather than Zephyrian, the results would be revolutionary. Team Beta has reached the weapon control centers, reported another voice, installing our interface modules now. Team Gamma is at the propulsion cores. These bioengines are incredible. If we can reprogram them, this ship will be faster than anything in the human fleet. While her boarding parties worked to capture the command ship from within, Maya coordinated the camp's continuing defense against the remaining Zephyrian forces. The enemy fighters were becoming increasingly frantic as they lost contact with their command vessel, their coordinated attacks degenerating into desperate individual strikes. Sarah, How are the families holding up in the shelters? Maya asked. They're scared but steady, the teenager replied through her communicator. Tommy keeps asking if his toy spaceship is helping with the battle. Maya smiled despite the chaos around her. Tell him it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping everyone connected. The refugee camp's defensive grid had evolved during the battle, with each system learning from the attacks and adapting its responses. What had started as a static defense network had become something approaching artificial intelligence, guided by the collective will of 10,000 people determined to protect their new home. Maya, Rodriguez's excited voice burst through the communicators. The conversion is working. The ship's biocomputer is accepting our programming. It's beginning to recognize humans as its proper crew. Through her sensors, Maya watched the massive command ship's bioluminescent patterns change from the aggressive reds and oranges of Zephyrian control to the cooler blues and greens that indicated submission to new masters. The vessel's weapons powered down as its reprogrammed nervous system began receiving commands from human operators instead of alien ones. General Harrison, are you seeing this? Maya asked through the quantum link. My tactical officers are reporting impossible readings. Are you telling me you've captured a Zephyrian command ship? Not captured, General. Liberated. This vessel was as much a prisoner of Zephyrian genetic programming as any refugee in our camps. We just gave it the chance to choose its own destiny. The remaining Zephyrian fighters, suddenly cut off from their command ship and unable to understand why it was no longer responding to their signals, began retreating toward the edge of the system. They had never encountered anything like this, a human defensive strategy that turned their own technology against them. All teams. Report status, Maya called to her boarding parties. Team Alpha has full control of the ship's nervous system. We're integrated with its biocomputer and it's responding to our commands. Team Beta reports all weapon systems are under human control. This thing has enough firepower to level a planet, and now it's ours. Team Gamma has established control over propulsion and life support. The ship is asking for new mission parameters. Maya took a deep breath, hardly believing what her 3 years of patient preparation had accomplished. A refugee camp had not only defended itself against impossible odds, but had captured the enemy's most powerful vessel. New mission parameters are as follows, she announced to both her teams and the ship's biocomputer. Protect human civilians. Defend refugee settlements. Show the galaxy that humanity doesn't just survive, we thrive. Through her quantum communicator, Maya could hear the excitement in General Harrison's command center as the implications of her victory became clear. If they could replicate her techniques, every refugee camp could become a fortress. Every displaced population could become a defensive asset. But Maya was already thinking beyond this single battle. The command ship contained the most advanced Zephyrian technology in their fleet, including detailed intelligence about their military capabilities and strategic plans. More importantly, it proved that the aliens' biotechnology could be turned against them, that their greatest advantages could become critical weaknesses. General, Maya said quietly, I think it's time to stop running from the Zephyrians and start teaching them what human engineering can really do. Above the refugee camp, the massive alien vessel that had come to destroy them now waited for orders from its new human crew, its biomechanical systems humming with loyalty to the species that had freed it from genetic slavery. The tent girl had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. 6 months after the Battle of Camp 77 Alpha, Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the liberated Zephyrian command ship, now renamed New Hope by its human crew. Through the massive bio-optical viewing systems, she could see the Terran Third Fleet maintaining formation as they approached the former enemy stronghold at Kepler 442, the same system she had been forced to evacuate 3 years earlier. The war had transformed completely since that desperate afternoon, when a refugee camp had proven that humans could adapt faster than any alien technology. Maya's techniques had spread throughout the displaced population scattered across human space, turning every settlement into a fortress and every refugee into a defender of civilization. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the surface, reported Lieutenant Johnson, who had traded his maintenance coveralls for a proper naval uniform. The Zephyrian defenders want to negotiate. Maya smiled at the irony. The aliens who had spent years conquering human worlds now found themselves surrounded by vessels they had built, but could no longer control. Her boarding techniques had been refined and replicated, allowing human forces to capture ship after ship by convincing their biocomputers to switch sides. Put them through, Lieutenant. The main display shimmered, revealing a Zephyrian commander whose biomechanical enhancements gleamed with nervous energy. Maya had learned to read their expressions during the months of psychological warfare that had followed her initial victory. Human Chen, the alien said in carefully pronounced standard. We wish to discuss terms for withdrawal from this system. I'm listening, Maya replied, though she already knew what those terms would be. The Zephyrians had finally realized they were fighting an unwinnable war against an enemy that could turn their own technology against them. We propose a return to pre-war boundaries. Our forces will withdraw from all occupied human systems in exchange for guaranteed safety of our vessels during retreat. Maya considered the offer. It was more than humanity had dared hope for 6 months ago, when Terran forces had been in full retreat across dozens of systems. But it wasn't enough. Counter-proposal, she said. Complete Zephyrian withdrawal from this galactic sector. Formal recognition of human territorial claims, and establishment of a joint commission to address the refugee crisis your invasion created. The alien commander's bioluminescent patches flickered, with what Maya had learned indicated stress. You ask for surrender rather than armistice. I'm asking for justice. Your people displaced millions of civilians who are still living in temporary camps. Those refugees deserve the chance to return home and rebuild what you destroyed. Through her peripheral vision, Maya could see her bridge crew working with quiet efficiency. Many of them were former refugees, who had proven their worth during the battle for the camp. Sarah, now her chief communications officer, coordinated with the human fleet while Tommy, who had insisted on serving despite his age, helped maintain the ship's biocomputer interface with tools that had once been toys. Ma'am, called Rodriguez from the tactical station. The fleet reports all systems ready. We can take the planet if negotiations fail. But Maya hoped it wouldn't come to that. The captured Zephyrian ships under human control represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Proof that technology could be liberated from its creators and serve a higher purpose. The biocomputers that had once enforced alien will now choose to protect human refugees and defend the principles of freedom and adaptation. Commander, Maya addressed the alien on the display, let me tell you something about the humans you've been fighting. We're not just survivors, we're improvisers. We take broken things and make them better. We take hopeless situations and find solutions no one else would imagine. Your people gave us the greatest gift possible when you tried to destroy us. You taught us exactly how strong we really are. The Zephyrian leader was silent for several moments, processing implications that would have been incomprehensible before the war began. Finally, he spoke with something that might have been respect. Your species is indeed adaptive. We accept your terms. As the transmission ended, Maya felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see General Harrison, who had arrived on the flagship just hours earlier for the final phase of operations. Lieutenant Chen, he said with formal ceremony, by order of the Terran Defense Council, and with the gratitude of a free humanity, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Admiral and granted full authority over refugee resettlement operations. Maya accepted the promotion with quiet dignity, though she couldn't help thinking about how much her life had changed since she was just the tent girl fixing shelters in a displaced person's camp. Thank you, sir. But I have one request. Name it. I want to keep my teams together. The people who fought with me, who helped build something from nothing, they've earned the right to see this through to the end. Harrison nodded. Granted, you'll have full autonomy to organize the resettlement effort however you see fit. Over the following hours, as Zephyrian forces began their withdrawal from human space, Maya coordinated the most ambitious refugee return operation in galactic history. The captured alien vessels, now crewed by humans and guided by reprogrammed biocomputers, could transport entire populations back to their home worlds in a fraction of the time conventional ships would require. But more importantly, the refugees weren't returning as victims. They were coming home as veterans of a war that had taught them skills they never knew they possessed. Engineers who had learned to build defensive networks from scraps. Civilians who had discovered they could coordinate military operations better than trained soldiers. Children who had grown up understanding that broken things could become stronger than new ones. Admiral, Sarah called from her station. We're getting reports from all the resettlement sites. People are calling this the Great Homecoming. Maya watched through the ship's bio-optical sensors as the first transport vessels descended toward Kepler 442's surface, carrying families back to worlds they had thought lost forever. But she knew this was more than just a return to the past. It was the beginning of a future where humanity had proven its ability to thrive under any circumstances. "Tommy," she called to her young assistant, "what does your toy ship tell you about our heading?" The boy consulted the device that had grown far beyond its original purpose, now serving as an interface to the ship's navigation systems. "It says we're going home, Admiral. All of us together." Maya smiled as she gave the order to set course for the next phase of operations. There were millions of refugees still waiting in camps across human space, and each one deserved the chance to discover what the tent girl had always known. That home wasn't a place you found, but something you built with your own hands, your own determination, and your own refusal to give up hope. General Harrison approached her one final time before returning to his own vessel. "Maya, there's something I need to say. 3 years ago, I thought you were too stubborn for military service. I was wrong. Your stubbornness saved us all." As the general left the bridge, Maya turned back to the stars ahead, where new worlds waited to be reclaimed, and new challenges demanded human ingenuity. She was no longer just the tent girl who fixed broken shelters, but she carried those skills with her into whatever came next, because that's what humans do. They take broken things and make them better. They turn refugees into heroes, and they prove that home is wherever people refuse to give up on each other. The war was over, but the real work of building the future was just beginning.